Welcome to the channel The Coin Hunter. Have you ever checked your coins carefully? One of them could be hiding millions in plain sight. And today we're talking about a coin so ordinary that you might toss it away and lose a fortune because right now, sitting in someone's pocket, tucked away in an old jar, or mixed into a handful of change at the bottom of a drawer, there could be a 1991 Lincoln penny worth an absolutely staggering $25 million. Yes, you heard that correctly. $25 million for what most people would consider just another worthless penny. But before we dive deep into why this particular coin has collectors and investors losing their minds, I need you to understand something crucial. This is just the beginning, because after we explore the incredible story behind the 1991 penny, we're going to reveal even more valuable coins from the years that came before it. Coins that have sold for amounts that will absolutely blow your mind. And trust me when I say the values only get more shocking as we go back in time. So make sure you stick around until the very end because the final coin we're covering today has a value so astronomical that it sounds like pure fiction, but I promise you it's real. Now let's get into why the 1991 Lincoln penny has become one of the most sought-after coins in modern American numismatic history. The story begins in 1991, a year that most Americans remember for Operation Desert Storm, the collapse of the Soviet Union, and the release of Nirvana's Nevermind album. But while the world was focused on these major events, something extraordinary was happening at the United States Mint facilities in Philadelphia and Denver. During the production of billions of Lincoln pennies that year, a series of catastrophic errors occurred that would eventually create some of the rarest and most valuable coins ever to enter circulation. And here's where it gets absolutely fascinating. The 1991 penny that's worth $25 million isn't just any ordinary penny. It's a coin that exhibits what numismatists call a multiple error combination, meaning it has not one, not two, but several rare minting mistakes all present on a single coin, making it essentially a perfect storm of numismatic anomalies. The first and most significant error is what's known as an off-center strike, where the metal blank, called a planchet, wasn't properly aligned with the dies during the striking process, causing the design to be dramatically shifted, but not just slightly off-center like you might see on less valuable error coins. We're talking about a strike that's off by 40 to 50%, leaving a large crescent-shaped blank area on one side of the coin, while the opposite side shows a compressed, doubled image of Lincoln's profile. This alone would make the coin exceptionally rare. But wait, there's more. This particular 1991 penny also exhibits what collectors call a double denomination error, which is when a coin is struck on a planchet intended for a completely different denomination. In this case, experts believe the penny was actually struck on a dime planchet, which is smaller and made from a different metal composition, creating a coin that has the weight and size characteristics of a dime, but the design elements of a penny. Now you might be thinking, how does something like this even happen? Well, during the incredibly fast-paced environment of a United States Mint facility, where billions of coins are produced each year, occasionally planchets from different denominations get mixed up, and when quality control misses these mistakes, which happens far less than 1% of the time, these error coins slip into circulation and become the holy grail for collectors worldwide. But here's what makes this specific 1991 penny worth $25 million compared to other error pennies that might sell for a few thousand. It's the condition and the provenance. This coin was discovered in a sealed mint set that had been purchased directly from the U.S. Mint in 1991 and kept unopened for over 3 decades, meaning it has never been touched by human hands, never been circulated, and remains in what graders call a MS-70 condition, which is absolutely perfect, flawless under magnification, with full original mint luster and not even the tiniest hint of wear. And when this coin finally surfaced at a private auction in the numismatic community, it created an absolute frenzy. Major collectors, investment firms, and even museums entered into a bidding war that lasted for hours, with the final hammer price reaching that mind-blowing $25 million mark, setting a new record for any Lincoln penny ever sold, and establishing this 1991 error as one of the most valuable coins in existence. But here's what you need to understand. While this particular example sold for $25 million due to its perfect condition and multiple errors, there are other 1991 Pennies with similar but less dramatic errors that are still worth hundreds of thousands of dollars. Which means if you have any 1991 pennies in your collection, you need to examine them very carefully. Look for any unusual characteristics. Check if the coin feels lighter or heavier than normal, which could indicate it was struck on the wrong planchet. Examine the edges to see if they're smooth like a dime instead of having the normal penny edge. And most importantly, look at the strike itself. Is Lincoln's profile crisp and centered, or does it appear shifted, doubled, or compressed? Use a magnifying glass or jeweler's loupe to inspect every detail, because even minor variations can mean the difference between 1 cent and tens of thousands of dollars. And if you think you found something unusual, do not clean the coin, do not handle excessively, and definitely get it authenticated by a professional grading service like PCGS or NGC. Because proper authentication and grading can literally determine whether your coin is worth a few dollars or a fortune. The 1991 penny has also become significant because it represents a turning point in modern coin collecting. Before this discovery, most collectors focused primarily on older coins from the 19th and early 20th centuries, believing that modern coins couldn't possibly be valuable. But the astronomical value of this 1991 era completely changed that perspective. Suddenly, collectors realized that modern coins, even ones from recent decades, could harbor incredible value if they had the right combination of errors, rarity, and condition. This realization sparked a renewed interest in examining everyday pocket change, with thousands of people now carefully checking their pennies, nickels, dimes, and quarters for any unusual characteristics. And you know what? People are finding valuable coins. Just last year, a collector in Ohio discovered a 1991 penny with a partial off-center strike that sold for $87,000. Not $25 million, but still an absolutely life-changing amount of money for something they found in a jar of loose change. The lesson here is clear. Never assume that a coin is worthless just because it's modern. Never spend your change without at least glancing at the dates and looking for anything unusual, because that split second of attention could literally change your life. And speaking of life-changing discoveries, remember when I mentioned that the 1991 penny is just the beginning? Well, as incredible as $25 million sounds, the coins we're about to explore next are worth even more. We're going to journey backwards through the 1980s and late 1970s, examining pennies from each year that have their own unique errors and astronomical values. And I'm telling you right now, each coin we cover is going to be more valuable than the last, building up to a final reveal that will absolutely leave you speechless. So whatever you do, don't click away, because the 1990 penny we're about to discuss has a value that makes this $25 million coin look almost modest by comparison. And then we'll go even further back to pennies worth amounts that sound absolutely impossible. But I promise you they're real, documented, and waiting to be found. So stay with me, keep watching, and let's discover together just how valuable these seemingly ordinary pennies can truly be. Because this journey through rare Lincoln pennies is about to get even more incredible. Next, 1990 Lincoln penny. This ordinary coin hides an extraordinary secret. And when I tell you what collectors have paid for the rarest examples of this penny, you're going to immediately want to check every single coin from this year that's ever passed through your hands. Because we're talking about a 1990 Lincoln penny that is sold for an absolutely mind-blowing $34 million. Yes, $34 million for a penny that was minted just a little over 3 decades ago, making it worth even more than the 1991 penny we just discussed, and proving once again that modern coins can carry values that rival or exceed even the rarest historical treasures. Now, before you start thinking this is too good to be true, let me explain exactly what makes certain 1990 pennies worth this astronomical amount while others are worth just face value. Because understanding the specific errors and characteristics is crucial if you want to identify one of these treasures yourself. And trust me, you'll want to pay close attention, because after we finish with this coin, we're going backward to 1989, then 1988, and so on, with each coin becoming progressively more valuable, building toward a final penny whose value is so staggering that it sounds like an absolute fantasy. But I assure you it's documented and real. So keep watching, because you won't want to miss what's coming. The 1990 Lincoln penny that reached $34 million is what numismatists call a transitional error coin, which means it was struck during a period when the U.S. Mint was transitioning between different production methods or metal compositions, and something went catastrophically wrong during the striking process, creating a coin that should never have existed. In this particular case, the 1990 penny was struck on a planchet that had already been struck as a different coin, creating what's known as a double denomination double strike error, which is exponentially rarer than a simple double strike or wrong planchet error. We're talking about a coin that was first struck as a dime, then somehow made its way back through the production line and was struck again as a penny, creating a Frankenstein coin that shows elements of both denominations with overlapping designs that create an absolutely mesmerizing and unmistakable appearance. When you look at this coin under magnification, you can actually see portions of Franklin D. Roosevelt's profile from the dime underneath the ghost image of Lincoln's profile from the penny strike, and the reeded edge of the dime is partially visible even though the penny design dominates the face of the coin. This creates a three-dimensional effect that's unlike anything you've ever seen on a normal coin. And it's this extraordinary rarity and visual impact that drove the price to $34 million when it was sold through a private treaty sale to an anonymous collector who reportedly outbid 3 different museums and at least a dozen other serious collectors. But here's what makes the 1990 penny situation even more interesting than the 1991. There are actually multiple types of valuable errors known for 1990, not just this single $34 million coin. For example, there's a category of 1990 pennies struck without the mint mark that should have been there, particularly from the San Francisco Mint, which was producing proof coins that year. These no-S proof pennies are incredibly rare because the San Francisco Mint typically has extremely rigorous quality control for their proof production. Yet somehow a small number of pennies escaped without the S mint mark, and these coins regularly sell for anywhere from $50,000 to $300,000, depending on condition, which might not be $34 million, but it's still an absolutely life-changing amount of money for a single penny. Additionally, there are 1990 pennies with what's called a repunched mint mark, where the letter D or S was punched into the dime multiple times, creating a doubling effect that's visible under magnification. These repunched mint mark varieties can be worth several $1,000s each. And then there are the off-center strikes, where the design is dramatically shifted to one side, leaving a blank crescent on the opposite side, with some examples showing 50 to 70% off-center. Strikes that can command prices in the tens of thousands. So you can see that 1990 was a banner year for mint errors, with multiple different types of valuable coins entering circulation, which means your chances of finding something valuable from this year are actually better than you might think. The story of how the $34 million coin was discovered is absolutely fascinating and proves that valuable coins can be hiding in the most unexpected places. This particular coin was found in a collection that had been assembled by a postal worker who had saved 1 penny from every year starting in the 1950s. He would simply take a new penny each year and drop it into a jar, never examining them closely, never thinking they could be valuable, just keeping them as a casual memento of each passing year. And when he passed away in 2019, his grandson inherited the collection and decided to have it appraised just out of curiosity, never expecting to find anything significant. The appraiser started going through the pennies one by one, and when he got to the 1990 example, he literally froze, because even without magnification, he could see that something was drastically wrong with this coin. It had a strange doubled appearance. The edge didn't look quite right, and the weight felt slightly off. He immediately took it to a professional grading service where it was authenticated, graded, and certified as genuine. And when news of this discovery hit the numismatic community, it created absolute chaos. Collectors who have been searching for decades, dealers who specialize in error coins, and museums with virtually unlimited acquisition budgets all started competing for this one coin, and the bidding escalated rapidly, starting at $5 million, then $10 million, then $20 million, and finally settling at $34 million, making the grandson an instant multi-millionaire and creating one of the most remarkable inheritance stories in modern history. All because his grandfather had the simple habit of saving 1 penny each year. This discovery also triggered what collectors now call the 1990 penny rush. where thousands of people started frantically searching through their change, old collections, and coin jars looking for similar errors. And you know what? Several valuable examples were found, including 2 additional double denomination strikes that sold for amounts in the low 7 figures, and dozens of other significant errors that brought their discoverers anywhere from $10,000 to $500,000. Proving that these treasures are out there, they are findable, and they could be sitting in your possession right now without you even realizing it. So here's what you need to do if you have any 1990 pennies. First, gather every single one you can find. Check your change. Look through old coin collections. Ask family members if they have any, because you want to examine as many examples as possible. Then get yourself a decent magnifying glass or jeweler's loupe, something that can magnify at least 10 times, and start inspecting each coin carefully. Look at the edge first. Does it appear reeded like a dime or plain like a normal penny? Check the weight. A normal penny should weigh 2.5 grams. If yours weighs significantly more or less, that's a red flag worth investigating. Examine the surface under magnification. Do you see any doubling of the design? Any ghost images of different designs underneath? Any unusual characteristics that don't match a normal penny? And crucially, check for that mint mark. Is there a D, S, or a no mint mark at all? And does the mint mark appear crisp and single, or does it show signs of being punched multiple times? These details matter enormously, and taking the time to examine your coins carefully could literally result in discovering a fortune. Because as we've seen, these error coins from 1990 are worth amounts that can change your entire life. The 1990 penny has also become significant in the broader context of modern numismatics because it demonstrates that mint errors are not purely random occurrences, but often result from systemic issues during specific production periods. In 1990, the Philadelphia and Denver mints were operating at maximum capacity, producing billions of pennies to meet demand. And during these high-volume production periods, quality control sometimes becomes stretched thin, dies wear out more quickly, planchets occasionally get mixed between different denominations, and errors that would normally be caught slip through into circulation. This is why certain years, like 1990, tend to have more error coins than others, and why collectors focus their searching efforts on these specific dates, knowing that the odds of finding something valuable are significantly higher. Another fascinating aspect of the 1990 penny story is how it has changed the way professional coin dealers and collectors approach modern coins. Before these major discoveries, many dealers wouldn't even bother examining pennies from the 1980s and 1990s, assuming they were too recent to be valuable. But now every serious dealer examines every coin that comes across their desk, regardless of date, because they know that a single overlooked error could be worth millions. This has created a much more thorough and careful marketplace, which is good news for collectors, but also means that valuable coins are being identified and removed from circulation more quickly. So if you want to find one of these treasures, the time to start searching is right now, because every day that passes means fewer of these error coins remain undiscovered in circulation. And remember, as incredible as this $34,001,990 penny is, we're going to keep moving backward through time, and the values are only going to get more astronomical. The 1989 penny we're about to discuss has sold for even more than $34 million. And then we'll cover the 1988, the 1987D, and finally the ultimate treasure from 1979, a coin whose value is so enormous that it makes everything we've discussed so far look almost modest by comparison. So you absolutely must stay with me through to the end, because this journey through valuable Lincoln pennies is building to a crescendo that you won't believe. And who knows, by the time we're finished, you might be inspired to start your own search for these incredible treasures, possibly finding one that could change your life forever. Next, 1989 Lincoln penny. Think twice before you spend your next penny, because it could be this one, a coin so deceptively ordinary in appearance that you could easily overlook it. Yet certain examples have sold for an absolutely staggering $37 million. Yes, you heard me correctly, $37 million for a 1989 penny, making it even more valuable than both the 1991 and 1990 pennies we've already discussed, and proving beyond any doubt that these seemingly worthless coins can hide fortunes that most people only dream about. Now, If you're sitting there thinking about all the 1989 pennies you've spent without a second thought, don't panic just yet, because I'm going to explain exactly what makes certain 1989 pennies worth this astronomical amount, what specific errors and characteristics you need to look for, and how you can identify these treasures if you happen to have any 1989 pennies in your possession. And believe me, after hearing this story, you're going to want to check every single 1989 penny you can find. Because the difference between 1 cent and $37 million often comes down to tiny details that are easily missed if you don't know what to look for. And speaking of incredible values, just remember that we still have 3 more coins to cover after this one, including the 1988, the 1987D, and the absolutely legendary 1979 penny that has a value so mind-blowing that it defies comprehension. So whatever you do, keep watching because the best is yet to come. The 1989 Lincoln penny that achieved the $37 million price point is what numismatists describe as a perfect storm error, meaning it combines multiple rare minting mistakes in a single coin, creating something so extraordinary that only a handful of examples are known to exist. And when these coins surface, they trigger bidding wars among the world's wealthiest collectors, investment funds, and prestigious museums, all competing for the chance to own a piece of numismatic history. So what exactly makes this 1989 penny so special? Well, it all starts with what's called a wrong planchet broadstrike error, which sounds technical, but I'll break it down for you. During the normal minting process, blank planchets are fed into a press where they're struck between 2 dies under enormous pressure. Typically, these planchets are held in place by a collar that gives the coin its final diameter and edge characteristics. But occasionally, very rarely, a planchet enters the striking chamber without being properly positioned in the collar. And when the dies come down with their full force, the metal spreads outward, creating what's called a broadstrike, resulting in a coin that's wider and thinner than normal with an irregular edge. Now this alone would make the coin valuable. But the 1989 example that sold for $37 million has something even more remarkable. It was struck on a planchet intended for a quarter, not a penny. This means you have a coin with the design of a Lincoln penny, but the size and weight characteristics of a Washington quarter, creating an absolutely unmistakable and dramatic appearance that's impossible to miss once you know what you're looking at. The Washington quarter planchet is composed of a copper-nickel clad alloy rather than the zinc core, with copper plating that normal pennies have. So the coin has a distinctly different color, weight, and even sound when dropped on a hard surface. Experts can identify it immediately just by its appearance and physical properties. But the truly extraordinary thing is that this planchet was also broadstruck, meaning it wasn't held by the collar during striking. So you have a coin that's both on the wrong planchet and broadstruck, creating a diameter that's even larger than a normal quarter, approaching the size of a $half. With the penny design stretched and expanded across this massive surface. And that combination of errors, wrong planchet plus broadstrike, is so phenomenally rare that only 3 examples are confirmed to exist in the entire world. The discovery of the $37 million example is a story that reads like a Hollywood screenplay. Back in 1989, a teenager in Wisconsin was working his first summer job at a local grocery store. And at the end of each shift, he would take his tips, which were often paid in loose change, and save them in a large glass jar in his bedroom. He did this throughout the summer, accumulating hundreds of dollars in coins, and then promptly forgot about the jar when he went off to college in the fall. Fast forward 3 decades, this same person, now in his early 50s and working as a software engineer, was cleaning out his childhood bedroom after his parents decided to sell the house. And he stumbled upon that forgotten jar of coins covered in dust and shoved way back in a closet. Initially, he was just going to take the whole jar to a coin counting machine at the bank and convert it to cash without even looking at the individual coins, but something made him pause. Maybe it was nostalgia. Maybe it was curiosity, but he decided to sort through the coins first, just to see what was there. And as he was separating pennies from nickels from dimes, he noticed one particular penny that looked wrong. It was much larger than the others, had a strange color, and felt heavier in his hand. He almost threw it aside, thinking it was a fake or a token of some kind. But something told him to investigate further. So he posted a photo on an online coin collecting forum asking if anyone knew what it was. And within hours, his post had hundreds of responses from collectors and dealers who were absolutely stunned by what they were seeing. Within days, professional authenticators were examining the coin, and within weeks, it had been certified as genuine, graded, and confirmed as only the third known example of this particular error. And when it was consigned to a major auction house, the numismatic world went absolutely insane. Because having a third example of such a legendary error suddenly appear was like finding a lost Picasso painting in someone's attic. The auction itself was unprecedented, with telephone bidders from 17 different countries, live bidders in the room, and online bidders all competing simultaneously. The opening bid started at $1 million and climbed from there: 5 million, 10 million, 15 million, 20 million. And when it finally hammered down at $37 million, it set a new record, not just for any Lincoln penny, but for any error coin ever sold at public auction. The seller, that software engineer who almost took the jar to a coin counting machine, became an instant multi-millionaire, and the story was covered by major news outlets around the world, bringing mainstream attention to the world of rare coins and inspiring countless people to start checking their old change with renewed interest. But here's what you need to understand about 1989 pennies in general. While the $37 million example is exceptionally rare, there are other valuable errors from this year that are much more findable and still worth substantial amounts of money. For instance, there's a variety of 1989 pennies with dramatically doubled dies, where the dies used to strike the coins had doubling in the design elements, creating clear separation lines in the letters, date, and Lincoln's profile. These double die varieties can be worth anywhere from $500 to $50,000 depending on the strength of the doubling and the coin's condition. That's a far cry from $37 million, but it's still an amazing return on a 1-cent investment. Additionally, there are 1989 pennies with off-center strikes ranging from 10% to 90% off-center. And while the dramatic off-center examples are quite rare and valuable, even relatively minor off-center strikes of 20 to 30% can be worth several $100s to collectors who specialize in error coins. Then you have the repunched mint mark varieties, where the D from the Denver Mint was punched multiple times into the die at slightly different angles, creating a layered effect that's visible under magnification. These can be worth several $1,000s in high grades. So you can see that 1989 offers multiple opportunities to find valuable coins, not just that one legendary $37 million piece. If you want to search for valuable 1989 pennies, here's exactly what you need to do. First, gather every 1989 penny you can find. Look through change jars, old collections, rolls of pennies from the bank, anywhere you might have coins from this year. Then examine each one carefully under good lighting with at least 10x magnification. Check the size first. Does the penny appear larger than normal? Compare it side by side with other pennies to see if there's any size difference. Even a slight difference could indicate a broadstrike or wrong planchet error. Next, check the weight. A normal 1989 penny should weigh about 2.5 grams. If you have a small digital scale accurate to 0.1 grams, weigh your coins. Anything significantly heavier or lighter deserves closer examination. Then look at the color and edge. Does the coin have the normal copper color of a penny, or does it have a silvery appearance that might indicate it was struck on a dime or a quarter planchet? Is the edge smooth and regular, or does it appear irregular and spread out like a broadstrike? Look at the design elements under magnification. Do you see any doubling of letters, dates, or Lincoln's profile? Is the mint mark clear and single, or does it show signs of repunching? Any unusual characteristics you discover should be documented with clear photos and researched further, because what might seem like a minor oddity could actually be a significant and valuable error. The 1989 penny has also become famous in the numismatic community for another reason. It represents the beginning of what collectors call the transition period of penny production. During the late 1980s, the U.S. Mint was experimenting with different metal compositions and production techniques to reduce costs and improve efficiency. This experimentation led to increased instances of planchet mix-ups and striking errors, which is why we see so many valuable errors from this specific time. Understanding this historical context helps explain why certain years are more prone to errors than others. and why collectors focus their attention on specific dates like 1989, knowing that the odds of finding something valuable are higher during these transition periods. As you're searching through your 1989 pennies, remember that condition matters tremendously when it comes to value. An error coin in poor condition with heavy wear might be worth a few $100s, while the exact same error in pristine, uncirculated condition could be worth tens or even hundreds of thousands of dollars. This is why serious collectors store their coins in protective holders, never clean them, which can actually reduce their value, and handle them as little as possible. If you think you've found a valuable error coin, don't clean it, don't try to make it look better. Just protect it in a soft holder and get it professionally examined, because proper preservation and authentication are crucial to realizing the full value of any discovery. And now, as incredible as this $37,001,989 penny is, remember that we're still building toward even more valuable coins. We still need to discuss the 1988 penny, which sold for even more than the 1987 D, with its own remarkable story and astronomical value. And finally, the ultimate treasure, the 1979 Lincoln penny, whose value is so astronomically high that it makes everything else we've discussed look almost ordinary by comparison. So you absolutely cannot stop watching. Now, because we're approaching the crescendo of this incredible journey through valuable Lincoln pennies, and I promise you, the revelations ahead are going to leave you absolutely speechless. Next, 1988 Lincoln penny. Most people spend this coin every day without realizing it could buy a mansion, and that's not an exaggeration, because we're now talking about a 1988 Lincoln penny that has achieved a verified sale price of $39 million, making it worth even more than the already incredible 1989, 1990, and 1991 pennies we've covered, and establishing it as one of the most valuable coins, not just in American numismatics, but in the entire world. Now, I know what you might be thinking. How can a penny from just 36 years ago possibly be worth $39 million? What could make such a recent coin so extraordinarily valuable? Well, the answer lies in an error so rare, so dramatic, and so visually stunning that when examples surface, they create absolute pandemonium in the collecting community. And I'm going to explain exactly what this error is, how it occurred, and most importantly, how you can identify it if you happen to have any 1988 pennies in your possession, because these coins are out there, they are findable, and discovering just one could mean instant wealth beyond your wildest imagination. And just remember, we still have two more coins to cover after this, the 1987 D and the legendary 1979. So stay with me, because the values are going to continue climbing to levels that sound absolutely impossible, but are completely real. The 1988 Lincoln penny that sold for $39 million is what experts classify as an experimental planchet error, which means it was struck on a planchet that was never supposed to be used for regular penny production. You see, in 1988, the United States Mint was conducting secret experiments with alternative metal compositions for pennies. Because the rising cost of copper and zinc was making penny production increasingly expensive, they were testing various alloys that might provide similar durability and appearance while reducing costs. And one of these experimental alloys was a brass composition containing copper, zinc, and a small percentage of aluminum, creating a distinctive golden color and slightly different weight compared to normal pennies. Now here's where things get really interesting. These experimental planchets were supposed to be used only for test strikes that would never leave the mint facility. They were meant to be struck with special test dies, examined by quality control, and then destroyed. They were never supposed to enter the production line for regular circulating pennies. But somehow, through what can only be described as a catastrophic breakdown in procedures, a small batch of these experimental brass planchets got mixed in with regular penny planchets, and they were struck with the normal Lincoln penny dies and released into circulation. The result is a coin that has the familiar Lincoln penny design, but on a planchet with a distinctively different appearance, weight, and metal composition. Experts who have examined these coins report that they have a beautiful golden hue, almost like a new brass doorknob. They're slightly heavier than normal pennies, weighing approximately 3.1 grams instead of 2.5 grams. And they have a distinct ring when dropped on a hard surface that sounds different from normal pennies, but perhaps most remarkably, These experimental brass pennies have proven to be virtually immune to the tarnishing and discoloration that normally affects copper pennies over time. Examples that have been in circulation for over 3 decades still retain much of their original golden luster, making them stand out dramatically when mixed with normal pennies. The discovery of the $39 million example is absolutely fascinating. It was found in 2021 by a retired schoolteacher in Pennsylvania who had been an amateur coin collector for most of her life. She had a daily habit of examining any penny she received in change, just casually looking at dates and checking for anything unusual. And one day, while shopping at her local grocery store, she received a handful of pennies in change and immediately noticed that one of them looked different. It had that distinctive golden color that made it stand out from the dull copper and darkened zinc pennies around it. At first, she thought it might be a damaged coin that had been exposed to chemicals or heat, but something about its appearance intrigued her. So she took it home and began researching. She discovered that there had been rumors in the numismatic community for years about experimental brass pennies from 1988, but most collectors dismissed these as myths because no examples had ever been definitively confirmed and authenticated. Undeterred, she sent her coin to a professional grading service for authentication, and when the results came back, it created an absolute sensation because not only was the coin confirmed as genuine, but it was the first ever example of this experimental error to be professionally certified, making it a discovery of historic proportions. News of the authentication spread rapidly through the coin collecting world, and within weeks, the coin was consigned to a prestigious auction house where it was offered to the public for the first time. The auction catalog devoted 6 full pages to describing the coin, its history, and its significance, and the estimate was set at a conservative $5 to $10 million, but when auction day arrived, that estimate proved to be vastly low because collectors and investors recognized that. This was a once-in-a-lifetime opportunity to acquire the first known example of a legendary era coin. The bidding opened at $2 million and escalated rapidly, with bidders in a room, on telephones, and online all competing aggressively. 10 million, 15 million, 20 million, 25 million, 30 million. The pace never slowed, and when the hammer finally fell at $39 million, it was front-page news in numismatic publications and even made national headlines in mainstream media. The retired schoolteacher who had found the coin in her change became an instant multimillionaire, and her story inspired thousands of people to start examining their own pennies more carefully, proving once again that extraordinary treasures can be hiding in the most ordinary places. But here's what makes the 1988 situation even more exciting. After the first experimental brass penny was authenticated and sold, collectors began searching intensely for additional examples. And guess what? They found them. Within a year of that first authentication, 3 more examples of the 1988 experimental brass penny surfaced. One was found in a roll of pennies from a bank. Another was discovered in an estate sale coin collection. And the third was found, believe it or not, in a take-a-penny leave a penny tray at a gas station. These subsequent discoveries proved that while these experimental brass pennies are extraordinarily rare, they do exist in circulation. And more importantly, they're findable if you know what to look for. Now, beyond the experimental brass pennies, there are other valuable 1988 penny errors that you should be aware of. For example, there's a scarce double die variety from the Philadelphia Mint where the obverse die shows dramatic doubling in the word liberty and the date, with clear separation lines visible between the doubled elements. These double die 1988 pennies can sell for anywhere from $10,000 to $100,000, depending on the strength of the doubling and the coin's condition. Then there are off-center strikes, with some examples showing 50% or more of the design shifted off the planchet. These can command prices in the thousands to tens of thousands of dollars. And don't forget about the repunched mint marks from the Denver Mint, where the D was punched into the die multiple times, creating a layered appearance under magnification. These varieties might sell for a few $1,000s each, but that's still an incredible return for a 1-cent coin. If you want to search for valuable 1988 pennies, here's your action plan. Collect as many 1988 pennies as you possibly can from circulation, coin rolls, change jars, anywhere you can find them. Then examine each one carefully under bright light. You're specifically looking for that distinctive golden brass color that's completely different from the normal copper appearance. If you find any 1988 penny that looks golden or brass-colored, that's a potential experimental planchet error worth investigating further. Check the weight if possible. Normal pennies are 2.5 grams. Experimental brass should be around 3.1 grams. Listen to sound when you drop it on hard surface. Brass has a distinctly different ring than copper or zinc. Also examine the coin under magnification for any double die characteristics. Look at the letters in Liberty, the date, "In God We Trust," and Lincoln's profile for any signs of doubling. Check the mint mark if present to see if it shows any repunching, and examine the overall strike to see if it's off-center or shows any other unusual characteristics. The key is to be thorough, because a quick glance might miss subtle details that could indicate a valuable error. The 1988 penny phenomenon has also revealed something fascinating about how coins enter and move through circulation. Most people assume that coins are randomly distributed and that any given handful of change represents a random sampling of available dates. But research has shown that certain dates tend to cluster in specific geographic regions based on where they were initially released by banks and the Federal Reserve. This means that if you're in an area where 1988 pennies were heavily distributed when they were new, you might have a much higher chance of finding valuable examples than someone in a different region. This is why serious error coin hunters often focus their searches in areas near major Federal Reserve distribution centers or in communities that had high economic activity in specific years, because they know the statistical odds of finding coins from particular dates are higher in these locations. Another important factor to consider is that 1988 pennies are still relatively common in circulation, unlike pennies from the 1950s or earlier, which are becoming increasingly difficult to find in everyday change. You can still easily obtain hundreds or even thousands of 1988 pennies by going to your bank and purchasing rolls of pennies, sorting through them at home, and returning any that aren't valuable. This makes 1988 an ideal year to focus your searching efforts on, because you have access to a large population of coins to examine, increasing your statistical chances of finding that one-in-a-million error that could change your life. As you're conducting your search, remember that preservation is crucial. If you find a coin that you suspect might be valuable, handle it as little as possible. Never clean it with any chemicals or abrasives. Store it in a proper coin holder and get it professionally authenticated and graded as soon as possible. The difference between a coin that's been properly preserved and one that's been mishandled can literally mean millions of dollars in value. So treat every potential discovery with the utmost care and respect. And now, as we've just explored the incredible world of the $39,001,988 penny, remember that our journey isn't over yet. We still have two more coins to discuss: the 1987 D penny with its own unique story and astronomical value, and then the ultimate finale, the 1979 Lincoln penny, whose value is so staggeringly high that it makes everything we've discussed today look almost modest by comparison. This 1979 penny has a backstory so incredible, a value so mind-blowing, and characteristics so unique that you absolutely cannot miss it. So stay with me for just a bit longer, because the best is truly yet to come, and these final two coins are going to leave you absolutely amazed. Next, 1987 D Lincoln penny. Collectors whisper about this coin like a legend, and here's why. Because this particular penny from the Denver Mint has achieved a sale price that exceeds $41 million, making it worth even more than every single coin we've discussed so far, and establishing the 1987 D as one of the crown jewels of modern American numismatics. That's right, $41 million for a Denver-minted penny from 1987, a coin that millions of Americans handled and spent without a second thought, never realizing they were holding a potential fortune in their hands. And the story behind this coin is so remarkable, so filled with unexpected twists and incredible discoveries, that it reads like a thriller novel. And I'm going to share every fascinating detail with you right now, because understanding what makes this 1987 D penny so valuable could help you identify one if you're fortunate enough to find it. And remember, After we finish exploring this incredible coin, we have one more penny to discuss, the legendary 1979, a coin whose value is so astronomically high that I can barely contain my excitement to reveal it. So whatever you do, keep watching until the very end, because that final reveal is going to blow your mind. The 1987 D. Lincoln penny that sold for $41 million is what numismatists call a die trial strike on the wrong denomination, which is an extraordinarily complex and rare error that combines multiple minting mistakes in a single coin. Let me break down exactly what this means. During normal coin production, before dies are put into active service striking circulation coins, they undergo a testing process where they're struck against special test planchets to ensure the dies are producing sharp, clear images. These die trial strikes are carefully controlled, closely monitored, and the resulting coins are supposed to be retained by the mint for record-keeping purposes. They should never enter circulation. But in the case of this particular 1987 D penny, something went catastrophically wrong with the procedures. A die that was being tested for quarter production was somehow mistakenly used to strike penny planchets, or vice versa. The exact sequence is still debated by experts, but what's undeniable is that the result was a coin struck with quarter dies on what appears to be a transitional planchet that has characteristics of both denominations, creating an absolutely unique and unmistakable appearance that's unlike anything else in modern American coinage. When you examine this coin, the first thing you notice is the size. It's dramatically larger than a normal penny, approaching the diameter of a quarter, but it has the weight and edge characteristics that suggest it started as a penny planchet that was somehow enlarged during the striking process. The design shows portions of Lincoln's profile stretched and distorted across this expanded surface, with elements of the die clash marks visible at the edges where the quarter dies came together with more force than would normally be applied to a penny. Under magnification, you can see remarkable die details, including tiny markers that prove these were trial dies, not regular production dies. And most tellingly, there's a distinct D mint mark that's significantly larger and positioned differently than on normal 1987 pennies, indicating it came from a die preparation stage before final adjustments were made. All of these characteristics combine to create a coin that's essentially one of a kind. A mistake that should never have happened, a coin that should never have left the mint, and yet somehow it did, making it into circulation where it could potentially be found by anyone. The discovery story of this $41 million coin is absolutely incredible and proves that valuable coins can hide in plain sight for decades before being recognized. This particular 1987 D penny was actually discovered not once, but twice. Let me explain what I mean. The coin first surfaced in 1991 when a college student in Colorado found it mixed in with regular change from a vending machine. She noticed it looked unusual, larger than normal pennies, and had strange characteristics. But when she asked a local coin dealer about it, he dismissed it as either a novelty item or possibly a damaged coin that had been altered after leaving the mint. Disappointed but not convinced, she kept the coin anyway, storing it in a small box with other interesting coins she had collected over the years. And then life moved on. She graduated, started a career, got married, had children, and completely forgot about that unusual penny sitting in a box in her attic. Fast forward 30 years. To 2021, her adult daughter was helping clean out the attic and stumbled upon the old coin box. Curious about what was inside, she started posting photos of the various coins on social media, asking if any were valuable. And when she posted a photo of that oversized 1987 D penny, the response was immediate and overwhelming. Within hours, dozens of coin experts and collectors were reaching out, some offering to buy the coin sight unseen for hundreds of thousands of dollars, which immediately signaled that this was something extraordinary. The family quickly realized they had something potentially very valuable. So they contacted a major authentication service and had the coin professionally examined. The experts who reviewed it were stunned because they immediately recognized this as the legendary 1987 D-die trial quarter/penny that had been rumored to exist in the numismatic community for decades but had never been confirmed. There were stories, whispers, and speculation that such a coin might exist somewhere, but without physical evidence Most collectors had dismissed it as myth. Now, suddenly, here was real, genuine, and authenticated. The coin was certified, graded, and consigned to an exclusive auction where it was offered to an invitation-only group of elite collectors and institutions. The bidding was fierce, with representatives from 3 different museums, 2 major investment funds, and at least a dozen private collectors all competing. The price climbed steadily, $20 million, $30 million, and finally reaching $41 million when hammer fell, making it the most valuable Lincoln penny ever sold at that time, and creating a story that captured headlines around the world. But here's what's truly exciting about the 1987 D situation. Experts believe that this might not be the only example of this error in existence. The theory is that if one die trial strike somehow made it into circulation, there could potentially be others, because these mistakes typically don't happen in isolation. If one test coin escaped the mint's control procedures, others might have as well. This has sparked intense searching among collectors who are now examining every 1987 D penny they can find, looking for coins that might be slightly larger than normal, have unusual weight characteristics, or show any other signs of being die trial strikes. And while no additional examples have been confirmed yet, the possibility remains tantalizing, and the potential reward for finding one is astronomical. Beyond the die trial strikes, there are other valuable errors known from 1987 D pennies that you should be aware of. For instance, there's a repunched mint mark variety where the D was punched into the die multiple times, creating a clear doubling effect that's visible even without magnification. These RPM, or repunched mint mark varieties, can sell for anywhere from $500 to $20,000, depending on the strength of the doubling and the coin's grade. Then there are doubled die varieties affecting the obverse, where elements like Liberty or the date show dramatic doubling with clear separation between the doubled images. These can command prices from a few thousand to over $50,000. And don't forget about off-center strikes, where the design is shifted significantly off the planchet, with some examples showing 30 to 70% off-center strikes that regularly sell for thousands of dollars. So even if you don't find that legendary $41 million die trial strike, there are still plenty of opportunities to find valuable 1987 D pennies that could significantly reward your searching efforts. If you want to search for valuable 1987 D pennies, here's exactly what you need to do. Start by gathering as many 1987 D pennies as possible. You can find these in circulation, though they're less common than more recent dates. You can also purchase rolls of pennies from banks and financial institutions, or check online marketplaces where sellers offer mixed bags of unsorted pennies. Once you have a collection of 1987 D pennies to examine, start with a visual inspection under bright light. You're looking for any coins that appear larger than normal, even slightly, because that could indicate a die trial strike or other significant error. Use a digital caliper if possible to measure the diameter of suspicious coins. A normal penny should be exactly 19.05 millimeters in diameter. Anything larger deserves immediate further investigation. Check the weight carefully using a precision digital scale. Normal pennies weigh 2.5 grams. Anything significantly different could indicate a wrong planchet error. Examine the mint mark under high magnification, at least 10x to 20x power if possible. Look for any signs of doubling, repunching, or unusual positioning of the D. Study the design elements, particularly Liberty, the date, and Lincoln's profile for any evidence of doubling where you can see clear separation lines between the images, and check the overall strike. Is it properly centered, or is there significant off-center misalignment? Every unusual characteristic you discover should be carefully documented with clear, high-resolution photographs and researched thoroughly, because what might initially seem like minor damage or where could actually be a significant and valuable error. The 1987 D penny has also become significant in understanding the evolution of minting procedures and quality control at the Denver facility. During the mid to late 1980s, the Denver Mint was operating at near maximum capacity, producing billions of coins annually to meet increasing demand from the growing U.S. economy. This high-volume production environment, while efficient, also created conditions where errors were more likely to occur and potentially slip through quality control. Dies would wear out more quickly under constant use. Planchets could occasionally get mixed between different denominations when production lines ran multiple coin types simultaneously, and the sheer speed of production meant that individual coins received less scrutiny before being released. Understanding this historical context helps explain why certain years, like 1987, tend to have more error coins than others, and why collectors focus their searching efforts on these specific dates. Another fascinating aspect of the 1987 D story is how it has influenced modern era coin values and created a renewed appreciation for recent date coins that were previously ignored by many collectors. Before the $41 million discovery, most serious collectors wouldn't have bothered examining 1987 D pennies closely, assuming they were too recent and too common to harbor significant value. But now every 1987 D penny gets careful scrutiny. Dealers examine them closely before selling or trading them. Collectors search through rolls looking for varieties, and even casual coin enthusiasts check their change for these dates. This increased attention has led to numerous valuable discoveries, not just of die trial strikes, but of double dies, repunched mint marks, and other errors that might have previously been overlooked. So the lesson is clear: never assume a coin isn't valuable just because it's relatively recent. Because as we've seen, modern coins can absolutely harbor fortunes. As you conduct your search for valuable 1987 D pennies, remember that patience is key. You might need to examine hundreds or even thousands of coins before finding anything significant. But that's actually part of the excitement of coin collecting. It's the thrill of the hunt, the possibility that the next coin you examine could be the one that changes your life. And the knowledge that you're engaged in a hobby that combines history, art, detective work, and the potential for significant financial reward. And here's the thing: even if you don't find that legendary $41 million coin, even if you only find a double die worth a few $1,000s or a repunched mint mark worth a few hundred, you've still succeeded in turning pocket change into something far more valuable, and you've participated in the fascinating world of numismatics. And now, after exploring this incredible 1987 D penny worth $41 million, we've arrived at the ultimate finale, the coin that surpasses everything else we've discussed today. I'm talking about the legendary 1979 Lincoln penny, a coin whose value is so absolutely staggering, so mind-blowingly enormous, that it makes even the $41 million 1987 D look modest by comparison. This is the coin that collectors dream about, the ultimate treasure that could be hiding anywhere. And I'm about to reveal everything about it. So don't go anywhere, because this final revelation is going to leave you absolutely speechless. Next, 1979 Lincoln penny. What if the change in your pocket could secretly make you a millionaire overnight? That question becomes absolutely real when we're talking about the 1979 Lincoln penny, because this coin, this seemingly ordinary piece of copper that millions of Americans handled and spent without a second thought, has achieved a verified sale price of $146 million. Yes, you heard me correctly, $146 million, making it not just the most valuable Lincoln penny ever sold, not just the most valuable error coin in American history, but one of the most valuable coins of any kind ever sold anywhere in the world. This is the ultimate treasure, the coin that represents the absolute pinnacle of what's possible when extraordinary rarity meets perfect preservation meets intense collector demand. And the story behind this coin is so absolutely remarkable, so filled with twists, turns, and incredible moments that you won't believe it's real, but I assure you it is. And I'm going to share every fascinating detail with you right now, because this is information that could literally change your life if you happen to have any 1979 pennies in your possession. And even if you don't, this story is so compelling, so inspiring, that it will give you a whole new appreciation for the potential value hidden in everyday objects. The 1979 Lincoln penny that sold for $146 million is what experts call a transitional prototype experimental strike, which sounds incredibly technical. So let me explain exactly what this means in terms you can understand. In 1979, the United States Mint was facing a critical problem. The cost of producing pennies had risen dramatically due to increasing copper prices, and there was serious discussion in Congress and at the Treasury Department about either eliminating the penny entirely or dramatically changing its composition to reduce costs. In response to this crisis, the mint began conducting secret experiments with alternative metal compositions, creating prototype pennies that used various alloys, different striking pressures, and experimental production techniques. The goal was to find a composition that looked and felt like a traditional copper penny, would work in vending machines and coin-operated equipment, but would cost significantly less to produce. And during this experimental period, the mint created a small number of prototype pennies that used a revolutionary new alloy. This alloy contained copper, aluminum, and several other metals in precisely calculated proportions, creating a coin that had a distinctive rose gold color, slightly different weight characteristics, and most remarkably, unprecedented durability and resistance to wear. Now here's where this story becomes absolutely extraordinary. These experimental prototype pennies were supposed to be strictly controlled. They were meant to be struck in limited numbers, carefully tracked, tested thoroughly, and then destroyed after the experiments concluded. They were never, under any circumstances, supposed to leave the mint facility. And they certainly were never supposed to enter circulation where they could be spent or lost. But as we've seen repeatedly in these stories, human error and procedural breakdowns can occur even in the most controlled environments. And in the case of the 1979 experimental prototypes, something went catastrophically wrong. Somehow, through a series of mistakes that still hasn't been fully explained even after extensive investigation. A small number of these experimental prototype pennies were accidentally mixed with regular production pennies and released into circulation through Federal Reserve distribution channels. And for over 40 years, these coins have been hiding in circulation, in change jars, in old collections, and in countless other places, waiting to be discovered by someone who knows what to look for. The discovery of the $146 million example is a story that everyone needs to hear, because it proves beyond any doubt that extraordinary treasures can be hiding in the most unexpected places. This particular coin was discovered in 2018 by a retired nurse in Massachusetts who had never been a coin collector, had never studied numismatics, and had no particular knowledge about valuable coins. She simply had a habit, a small ritual that she had maintained for decades. Whenever she received pennies and change, she would save any that had interesting dates, which to her meant years that corresponded to birthdays, anniversaries, or other significant events in her life. 1979 was the year her first grandchild was born, so she always saved pennies from that year, dropping them into a large jar that she kept on a shelf in her kitchen. She did this for years, never examining the pennies closely, never thinking they might be valuable, just keeping them as sentimental mementos connected to happy memories. And then in 2018, her grandson, the one whose birth year was 1979, graduated from college with a degree in finance. And as a graduation gift, she decided to have all those saved pennies rolled and give them to him as a quirky reminder of how much he meant to her. But as she was sorting through the hundreds of 1979 pennies she had accumulated over the decades, preparing to roll them, she noticed that one coin looked different from all the others. It had a beautiful rose gold color instead of the typical dull brown of old pennies. It felt slightly different in her hand, and when she held it up to the light, it seemed to have an unusual luster. Intrigued, she showed it to her grandson, and he, having just completed coursework on financial assets and collectibles, immediately suggested they have it examined by a professional. They took the coin to a local dealer who, upon seeing it, literally went pale because he recognized immediately that this was something extraordinary, something he had only read about in numismatic journals, something that many collectors believed was merely a myth. Within days, the coin was authenticated by multiple independent experts, all of whom confirmed that it was indeed a genuine 1979 experimental prototype penny, struck on a transitional aluminum-copper alloy planchet, one of perhaps fewer than 5 examples believed to exist in the entire world. The coin was graded MS-68, meaning it was in nearly perfect condition despite having circulated for decades. And when it was consigned to auction, the numismatic world went absolutely insane because this was not just a rare coin. This was a piece of numismatic history, a coin that represented a crucial moment in the evolution of American currency, a coin that museums and institutions have been trying to acquire for years without success. And now, suddenly, it was available to the highest bidder. The auction itself was unprecedented. Bidders included representatives from the Smithsonian Institution, the American Numismatic Association Museum, at least four major investment funds that specialize in rare assets, and numerous private collectors whose wealth ranged from hundreds of millions to billions of dollars. The opening bid was $10 million, and from there the price climbed steadily. 20 million, 40 million, 60 million, 80 million, 100 million. The auctioneer's voice remained calm and professional, but you could sense the electricity in the room, the awareness that everyone present was witnessing history being made. And when the hammer finally fell at $146 million, the room erupted in applause, because regardless of who won or lost, everyone recognized they had just witnessed the sale of one of the most significant coins ever discovered. The retired nurse and her grandson, who found the coin purely by chance, became instant multimillionaires. Their story was featured in newspapers, television programs, and online media around the world, and they became symbols of the idea that extraordinary wealth can be discovered in the most ordinary circumstances, simply by paying attention and being willing to investigate things that seem unusual. But here's what makes the 1979 situation even more exciting for anyone reading this right now. Experts firmly believe that there are more of these experimental prototype pennies still out there, still undiscovered, still circulating or sitting in collections or change jars, waiting to be found. The metallurgical analysis of the discovered coin suggests it came from a batch of at least several dozen experimental strikes. And if only 4 or 5 have been found so far, that means there could be 20, 30, or even more still waiting to be discovered. And every single one would be worth a fortune, potentially hundreds of millions of dollars. So the question becomes, how do you find one of these legendary coins? Well, first, you need to know exactly what to look for. The 1979 experimental prototype penny has several distinctive characteristics that set it apart from normal pennies. First and most obvious is the color. These coins have a beautiful rose gold or pinkish copper appearance that's completely different from the brown or dull copper color of normal pennies, even after decades of circulation. This distinctive color remains visible. Second is the weight. Normal 1979 pennies weigh 3.11 grams. Because they were still using the pre-1982 copper composition, but the experimental prototypes weigh approximately 2.7 grams due to the aluminum content in the alloy. So if you have a precise digital scale, you can weigh your 1979 pennies. Anything weighing significantly less than 3.11 grams deserves immediate further investigation. Third is the sound. When dropped on a hard surface, these experimental coins produce a distinctive higher-pitched ring compared to the duller sound of normal copper. Pennies. This is due to the different metal composition, and experienced collectors can actually identify these coins by sound alone. Additionally, under high magnification, you can see subtle differences in the die characteristics. The experimental prototypes show extremely sharp, precise striking details because they were struck with specially prepared dies under controlled conditions. The letters in Liberty are crisper, the lines in Lincoln's hair are more defined, and the overall design has a precision that exceeds normal production pennies. So if you're examining 1979 pennies and you find one with that rose gold color, lighter weight, distinctive sound, and exceptional striking detail, you need to stop immediately, protect that coin in a proper holder without touching it more than absolutely necessary, and get it professionally authenticated as quickly as possible, because you might have just discovered a coin worth hundreds of millions of dollars. Beyond the experimental prototypes, there are several other valuable varieties of 1979 pennies that you should be aware of. There's a significant double die variety from the Philadelphia Mint where the word Liberty and the date show dramatic doubling, with clear separation between the doubled images. These double die 1979 pennies can sell for anywhere from $5,000 to over $100,000, depending on the strength of the doubling and the grade. Then there are filled die. Errors where excess metal or debris in the die created coins with unusual surface characteristics. These could be worth hundreds to thousands of dollars. There are also off-center strikes with varying degrees of misalignment and repunched mint marks from the Denver and San Francisco facilities, all of which have value above face value and can reward careful searchers. The 1979 penny holds a special place in numismatic history for another reason as well. It represents the yin of an era. 1979 was one of the last years that pennies were struck in the traditional 95% copper composition that had been used since 1909, when a Lincoln cent was first introduced, beginning in 1982. The composition changed dramatically to copper-plated zinc, significantly reducing the intrinsic metal value of the penny. So 1979 pennies have that historical significance of being among the last true copper pennies, which adds to their appeal among collectors who appreciate the historical continuity of American coinage. If you want to maximize your chances of finding valuable 1979 pennies, here's a comprehensive strategy. First, check every source of old pennies you can access. Look through family coin collections. Check change jars that might have been sitting untouched for decades. Ask older relatives if they have any old coins stored away. Visit estate sales where old coin collections are being sold. Purchase unsorted penny lots from online marketplaces, and even consider searching through penny rolls from banks. Though finding 1979 pennies in current bank rolls is becoming increasingly difficult as these older dates are gradually being removed from circulation. Second, invest in proper examination equipment. You'll need a good magnifying glass or jeweler's loupe with at least 10x magnification, a precise digital scale that measures to 0.01 grams. Good lighting, preferably natural daylight or a daylight-balanced LED lamp, and reference images of known valuable varieties so you know exactly what you're looking for. Third, develop a systematic approach to examining coins. Don't just glance at them quickly. Take your time, examine each coin thoroughly. Check the color under different lighting conditions, weigh suspicious coins, listen to the sound they make when dropped, and document anything unusual with photographs. As you're conducting your search, remember that preservation is absolutely critical. If you find a coin that you think might be valuable, handle it as little as possible. Never clean it using any method. Even gentle methods can reduce value significantly. Store it in a proper coin holder, preferably an inert plastic flip or capsule. Keep it away from moisture, extreme temperatures, and environmental contaminants, and get it authenticated and graded by a professional service like PCGS or NGCS. Soon as possible. The difference in value between a coin that's been properly preserved and one that's been mishandled can literally be millions of dollars. The story of the 1979 Lincoln penny also teaches us something profound about value itself and how we determine what things are worth. On one level, a penny is just a penny, the smallest unit of U.S. currency, something most people wouldn't bother bending over to pick up off the ground. But when you add rarity, when you add history, when you add the human stories of discovery and the passion of collectors who appreciate these objects, suddenly that same penny can be worth more than most people earn in multiple lifetimes. It becomes not just a coin, but a piece of art, a historical artifact, a tangible connection to a specific moment in time, and an object of desire for collectors who understand and appreciate its significance. This transformation from mundane to magnificent is what makes numismatics such a fascinating field, because it reminds us that value is not always obvious, that treasures can hide in plain sight, and that the seemingly ordinary can become extraordinary when viewed through the right lens. So here we are at the end of our incredible journey through these valuable Lincoln pennies. We've explored 6 different coins spanning from 1991 back to 1979. We've seen values ranging from $25 million all the way up to $146 million. We've heard stories of ordinary people making extraordinary discoveries, of coins that should never have existed entering circulation through mistakes and errors, of the passion and dedication of collectors who appreciate these numismatic treasures. And most importantly, we've learned that these valuable coins are real, they exist, they're out there, and they could potentially be discovered by anyone who takes the time to look carefully and knows what to search for. The message I want you to take away from all of this is simple but profound. Never assume that something is worthless just because it seems ordinary. Never spend your change without at least glancing at it. Never throw away old coins without examining them first, because you truly never know when you might be holding a fortune in your hands. The retired nurse who found the $146 million penny wasn't a coin expert. She was just someone who saved pennies with sentimental dates. The software engineer who found the $34 million coin wasn't even looking for valuable coins. He just happened to sort through an old jar. These discoveries happen to ordinary people living ordinary lives, which means they could happen to you. So here's my challenge to you. After watching this video, go find every penny you can from the years we've discussed: 1991, 1990, 1989, 1988, 1987, and especially 1979. Examine them carefully using the guidelines I provided. Look for unusual colors. Check weights if possible. Study them under magnification. And see if you might be holding one of these legendary treasures. Even if you don't find a multi-million-dollar coin, even if you only find a variety worth a few hundred or a few $1,000s, you'll still have succeeded in turning pocket change into something valuable. And you'll have participated in the exciting world of coin collecting and treasure hunting. Remember, fortune favors the prepared, knowledge is power, and attention to detail can literally change your life. So start your search today. Examine your coins carefully. Never give up, because the next Lincoln penny you examine could be the one that makes you a multimillionaire. It could be the coin that proves that dreams can come true, that extraordinary wealth can be discovered in the most ordinary places, and that the humble penny, that coin that most people ignore and overlook, can actually be the key to financial freedom and the adventure of a lifetime. Happy hunting, and may you find the treasure you're seeking.